What's up, Sim Racers? This is Larry TJRSM, and today we're bringing you a VR video with iRacing and settings. I spent about 8 days testing this off and on, and it's actually quite cumbersome because you got to load the game up and each time and change the settings and then reload it again. Uh, so yeah, if you had problems with trying to set up your game in VR and not noticing it taking effects, it's because you actually got to, when you're in the performance data of the settings of the game itself, you have to make your changes, close the game out, and relaunch the game, which can get quite cumbersome. But before I go too far into this, first off, I want to thank all my subscribers out there. I hit 1,003 subscribers. I guess over the weekend. I was actually out of town this weekend. This is why it's late posting up a video today. But yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys and gals that subscribe. If I have any gals out there, I don't know. But yeah, thanks for subscribing. More great things to come. I tend to, if you don't know, I tend to try to give you information that's helpful to you, tutorials, how-tos, reviewing products. That's really what I like to do. I don't like to just sit there and race and try to entertain you. I like to give you something useful so you can go back and have a freaking blast yourself. So I might hit up and do a video or something later on with, race with subscribers kind of thing. Later on when I get some time to do that, because that would actually be pretty fun. Someone suggested that in the comments on one of my other videos, so that would actually be a lot of fun actually to do. So yeah, well, let's go into this here and talk about iRacing in VR. So if you watch my Assetto Corsa video, I had mentioned to change the config file in the documents folder as well as the Steam apps folder. For iRacing, it actually is not like that. iRacing, you don't actually have any DX11 config file in the Steam apps folder. So you only change it in this one spot. So that's good. Makes it a little easier. So documents, go to documents, obviously. Open up your Explorer, right? Go to documents, go to iRacing. You want to find this render DX11 here, and that's the folder you want. Obviously, click on it, go open. WordPad is what I like to use. Scroll all the way down and then back her up until you see Oculus Rift. And, if you're using, I guess the Vive or something, it's in here too. Let me see. I haven't looked for the Vive, actually, because I'm doing this with the Rift. Is it the Vive? Oh, okay. I think the Vive... Rift is native. The Vive, you'll have to use OpenVR for that one, I believe. Vive owners, HTC Vive owners, comment. Whenever I get the Pro, I'll make another video of it, right? But what you're interested in, iRacing actually comes default pixels per display. This is your super sampling. It doesn't say super sampling, but us in VR is kind of used to seeing super sampling, right? SS or something. This is what it's talking about. It defaults at 150%, which is a 1.5 super sampling rate, which means you're 150% more pixels. So yeah, the more the better, right? Well, not always the case. Actually, I've tried this at 200, and it tends to look speckled. If that makes sense to you, it's like oversaturated, and so the image doesn't look quite as good at, say, anything over 1.7 or 170% to me. Maybe my eyes are jacked up, I don't know, but to me, I didn't notice anything at 200 as opposed to 170, and 150 seemed to be a really good sweet spot. Now, now I'm running a 1080 Ti. My description of my hardware is down in the description below, so check it out. But i7, I forgot the processor, and actually my processor, someone commented I'm running out of processor and stuff, and I was testing it, and I think they were right, but in iRacing it doesn't seem to be the case. I'm running around 40-50%, when I use like the task manager to look see what's going on with it. So and the graphics card's around 70 to 80% of the graphics card. So just give you an idea of how intensive VR is. But yeah, you want to set this if you're a diehard and you're at your barf level is 10 when you're running when you drop down to say 45 FPS, the asynchronous kicks in and it really affects you in that way. You'll want to set this at 120% or 1.2 super sampling if you're using say the Oculus tray tool, and set it and forget it. You're gonna hit 90 FPS 99% of the time on most tracks. I haven't tried a full race with dirt tracks, but I have done open practice sessions with dirt tracks, and at 120%, no problems at all. I'm hitting 90 FPS. I would drop to the 68 to 80 range here and there when it was dusty, real dusty. But you can adjust some of those settings actually further in this video that I'll explain to adjust. But I'm actually having to retake this first part of the video because my mics weren't picking up correctly. So should be coming through loud and clear now. But yeah, 120% is your sweet spot. Set it and forget it. The run, 99% at 90 FPS. Now for those that don't mind it hitting 45 FPS every once in a while, say 95% of the time you're in the, or 90% of the time you're in the 90 FPS. It's just when you go across busy sections where there's like crowds or grandstands, say like the Nürburgring on the front straight is pretty intensive, and you'll drop down to 45 FPS, especially if you have this set at 1.5 or 150 in this case here. So if you don't mind that, it doesn't bug you, then yeah, crank it up to 150. But if it bugs you, keep it at 120. So, and that's with a 1080 Ti even. So, not everything is optimized yet at this day and age. Hopefully in 3 years from now, this will be an obsolete video and we won't even be talking about this, right? Another feature I ran across, I believe from Gamer Muscle actually, was pretty cool, was the auto select. And I saw it on someone else's as well. I can't remember, but it defaults at 0. Auto select and auto center at 0. I changed it to 1, and that just eliminates the 2 questions you get asked when you're launching the game in VR. Do you want to launch it in VR? So if you like answering the questions all the time, leave it at 0. If you don't want to answer it ever again, leave it on 1, because I don't know, why would you want to race without VR, right? It's freaking awesome. So, all right. I digress. Let's get on to the rest of the video. The second part of this video, of course, I'll splice it all together, make it seem seamless, except obviously for the conversation I'm having about making it seamless, right? So anyway, let's get on with the rest. Remember, 120% is your friend for the maximum rate. And you know what? I will note, actually, it doesn't look bad at 120% in VR. It looks better, obviously, at 150%. But it's very playable at 120%, and as long as you put on aliasing and stuff, it looks pretty clean actually at 120%. So, and that's with different nighttime, daytime, afternoon, blah blah blah, all that stuff. So, anyway, let's get on to the second part of the video and getting into the meat and potatoes. All right. So you may find that some tracks, being with large grandstands and stuff, they're gonna give you trouble, and you're gonna have to want to drop that super sampling down to something lower, obviously depending on your video card. But we'll go over the settings as soon as this loads. Usually loads pretty quick, but we'll see. And I'm gonna do this in VR because I can. Looking around. One thing about iRacing, it actually takes quite a bit of time to do this testing because it takes so long to load up the games. And then, sometimes you find out the session ended when you load it up and you're like, dang it, let me go find another session to test in. So it's a little bit cumbersome. Just be sure to hit that subscribe button so we can get on past the 1,000 mark even further. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and load my setups, Nürburgring, for when I do go out on track. And let's explain this stuff here. What you're concerned with, obviously, is the graphic settings. And resolution, that really doesn't matter. That's just the resolution on your screen, not with your Oculus. UI zoom, I have it 125%. Basically, the bigger you change it, the bigger this is, or the smaller you change it, the smaller this whole menu system is. 125 looks fine for me. Everything else, you can just leave it as you see here. It doesn't really matter. You know, one GPU. If you have multiple GPUs, you could change that, but generally VR works perfect off of one. It doesn't support multiple GPUs from what I understand. All right, so first up, this is the meat and potatoes of everything here. The performance. I put everything to max quality, and I'll explain this stuff as I go here. If you want to hit the optimal 98% in all different track sessions, nighttime racing, dirt. Although I did not race a dirt race yet to have all that cloud smoke around to affect my FPS. If you do, actually, you might want to turn off this render dynamic tire data and the dynamic track data to increase your FPS just on the fly. And also note that all these settings you change, you actually have to exit the game and reload the game to see an effect, see the effect take place. So it gets kind of cumbersome to change some things. Some of these things actually do take effect while you're in game, like your higher detail, your cockpit mirrors, that takes effect right away. AA samples does not. But let me go down the list here, but I just wanted to point that out. So I set my car details on high because I like everything to look crisp. That is the highest detail to go. Pit objects on low, and events on low, and grandstands on low. If you turn these off, really grandstands, especially if you turn that off, it just looks funky. I mean, the track around you is so desolate, you don't even want to play on it. So leave all those on low. They do make a hit on your FPS, but like I said, we're trying to optimize here to get the best quality at the highest frame rate. Crowds off, and oddly enough, you'll see a couple people standing around in the grandstands here and there, even with crowds off. Objects off. These actually make a pretty big difference, especially on the Nürburgring when you're coming around to the front straight. I could not get out of the 45 FPS range until I turned these off. And every time I came around after the last turn onto the front straight, I would drop down to 45, albeit for just a couple seconds. But I was trying to keep it out of that range, you know, somewhere around the 60 FPS range if it dropped to. Certainly not the 45s. But and then especially if you have a couple more cars around you fighting for position right off that front straight, you know, it's going to hamper your visual effects. So anyway, so crowds off, objects off. Let's see, particles, low detail. You can go all the way up to high detail. It doesn't seem to make that huge of a difference between them. Maybe it does on the dirt, but I keep it on low. You seem to be able to see everything nicely. Full res, you can turn it on or off, and then soft just softens the edges of the pixels. Again, on a track, it doesn't really matter. It's something you can leave it on and leave it on soft, and you won't see it much, but it will take you'll see the hit more on dirt tracks. So if you're doing rally or something like that, you'll see it more. Headlights low. This is really just for nighttime racing stuff. So I keep it on low detail, and that seems fine. I played around with this between 12 and 15 cars. I just left it at 15. It didn't really seem to make a difference either way, but this is just how many cars appear around you, or that it's going to pick up around you. Obviously, the lower number, the less it has to resolve. But in iRacing, you tend to spread out so much anyways after the start that it hasn't become an issue. So 15 was kind of a good spot to be at with no problems. Frame rate, some people leave it on no limit. I've read somewhere, and I've mentioned in other videos, VR videos, that you're only going to hit 90 FPS as your goal anyway. So I cap it at 92, and then the bat is at 100. Actually, you can make that 92 as well. Because just in case if you have no limits on and something goes buggy and it doesn't read that and it defaults to this limit, I want this to be low to where it's not trying to resolve it even higher. Let's see, GPU. This really kind of pertains to your GPU itself. Since I have a 1080 Ti, it's 12 gigs of RAM, so this max is 4. So I max it on out, and the same here for the max system memory. I max it out as well. Don't seem to have a problem either way. Now, anisotropic filtering, leave it on 16. Like others, I think like Gamer Muscles mentioned before, it doesn't, new graphics cards, they handle this just fine. I haven't noticed it be a problem at 16, so I leave it on. I leave it on 2. If you are having some problems with FPS on your card, certainly drop it down to off. But you're going to get all kind of jaggies around the edges, and it looks bad. And for me, it takes the immersion away by seeing these jaggies, especially on the white. I'm trying to look. Hopefully, it's picking up where I'm looking here. Like the white stripes there, as you're running across them, they look great. But when you look across the track, they're shimmering more. And especially when you're, coming up to a turn and he's got this fencing behind you like this, everything starts shimmering a lot and becomes real distracting. And so I leave it on 2, and 2 works great. Obviously, if you're just in practice mode yourself, you can crank it up to 8, but 2 seems to be the minimum to make everything look a little bit crisper, get rid of the jaggies, and it seems to work just beautifully like that. So I leave it on. See, render dynamic track data, what that's for is, like here it says, enables and disables rendering of dynamic track, rubber, marbles, dust. Great for dirt racing and stuff. You don't really see it so much with a little bit of the off-track excursions and stuff. You'll see it there, but I'll leave it on. And same with the tire data, dynamic tire data. That's kind of where you'll see pieces of rubber come up. Like this one here, track data. You'll see like when you hear the rocks in your fenders and stuff hitting, you'll see them fly out across your hood every once in a while. Having this on allows that to happen. Same thing with the render dynamic tire data. Having this on, you'll see little track marbles fly over your hood every once in a while. Really cool in open wheel cars, like any open wheel car, or the oh shoot, I can't think of the name of the car that I like. The Radicals, and you notice it a lot more in like the Radicals. The GT cars, you don't really notice it too much, every once in a while. But it's not enough to leaving these ticked on. It doesn't hit your FPS any. So if you drop 1 FPS, big deal by having this on. It just adds so much immersion for when it does actually happen. You're like, oh shit, that's pretty cool. So I leave it on. Shadow maps off. This actually takes a really big hit on you. If you care, you can run shadow maps on track and cars. That would be the one I would run. I wouldn't run it on everything because you really don't need the shadow maps on, say, your stands and your surrounding areas to project shadows themselves onto the track. It's just a lot of extra work on your GPU that you just don't need, and it's not important to racing. So, but actually with shadow maps off, I don't feel like the cars are floating around. It seems to still have shadows, and it's fine. Looks great. Get on down to night. I don't really do night racing. I haven't done any night racing, but I've done night practices for this setup, and it looks really sweet in VR and very immersive and stuff. But night shadow maps on, that actually kind of helps you to have that on at night because it renders them separately or something. Let me see. It's a preferred method over shadow volumes since the performance is significantly better. what it was saying. So, and the walls and headlights, you know, basically you're getting reflections off the walls and headlights coming up behind you. So from shadow maps to here is all pertains to night driving right here. If you're curious, the number of lights, 128. If you go to like the Sebring at night, you see all those little freaking reflectors, and it's pretty cool actually. But the more lights you have, and oddly enough, 128 is the highest number, and you literally got to click this thing 128 times to get there. You can't just hold it down and to get there. So yeah, I don't know. They should fix that. No filter. I leave that off on no filter. It takes a pretty big hit. You won't get out of 45 FPS if you got this on, especially if you got around 8 or 4. You'll be in asynchronous mode constantly. Dynamic cube maps. Let's see. This option controls the number of dynamic cars, cockpit, cube maps rendered per frame. I leave it at 0. Same with the fixed cube maps. That's for your track objects. So this is in your car objects, and this is your track objects. I leave them at 0. Doesn't seem to hurt anything. Now shader quality. This is one that matters. I leave it on high, and the reason is when you're in your car and you look down at your guy, his legs, his arms. When you have it on, say, medium, you'll see it turns off the tire data and the full res and stuff off. If you go to low, it turns all that stuff off. Low's fine. It, of course, increases your FPS, quite a bit, and which is great. So if you're having time struggling with your FPS, change this. You know, of course, you'll have to reload into the game and stuff. Keep that in mind. It doesn't just take effect right there. At least I didn't notice it. Maybe you do, but I haven't noticed it. But low is if you're really struggling. I'd set it down to low, but your in cockpit looks very washed out. And medium, your guy still has just basically like a solid. Looks like it's a crayon looking pants and stuff. It has no texture to your outfit and for your driver is what it is. It's just a solid color, like you colored it in with a marker. But once you put it on high detail, you actually see the seams and the textures within your guy's gloves, his arms, his pants, and all that. And between the two, between medium and high, you know, I don't notice any FPS drops, so I leave it on high. Maybe because I have a 1080 Ti, that might be why, but I leave it on high because, you know, it looks way better inside. And the interior of the car, the shader quality being high, doesn't get washed out looking. When you put this on low, everything's like almost white looking in your interior. So it just looks really bad. And I want it to look great because that's kind of part of the point of VR, right? So leave it on high, and that works really well. Let me see. Show driver arms. Obviously, you're in VR. Show it. Virtual mirror, I leave that off. You'll take a hit with that on, so leave it off. Cockpit mirrors, max is 4. Some cars have 3, some have 2. I just leave it set on 4 because some of them have, you got your 2 side mirrors, you got your center screen, that is usually like your backup, and then some of them literally like the McLaren or whatever has a rear view mirror too. So if you put it on 3, it won't show the rear view mirror. So I'll leave it on 4. Higher detail in mirrors, I leave that off. Headlights on track and mirrors off. Far terrain and two pass trees off. In VR, you want things to look nice and clean in your mirrors so you can tell what's coming up behind you. And higher detail actually takes quite a bit of hit on your frame rate. So I leave that off because the mirrors themselves, your side mirrors especially, you can see really good details in the cars coming up. Now, headlights on track, that's the one I would like to experiment a little bit more because, like, I had someone hybriding me, and I had, to say, hey, I'm coming up on you, faster, make some room kind of thing. And I believe with headlights on track and mirrors would help me see that a little bit better. Because, like, over here, you got headlights low detail. This really just pertains to nighttime. So if you do nighttime racing, you want low detail to see. You want some detail, so you want to see headlights on, right? but this one pertains to what you see it in your mirror. I believe with that on, that's going to help for VR, but this takes a little bit more experimenting with it. I didn't notice it dropping my FPS, but it's hard to get someone to, hey, high bright, put on your high bright so I can see a difference, because most of the tracks you're running are daylights tracks anyway. So, and if they're high brighting you from a far distance, VR does not pick up rendering, at say 1,000 feet from your car. You just don't see anything. Or it looks like you're playing Minecraft. It's it's blocky. It looks like crap. It's hard to tell the details. So you're best leaving it off, but experiment with that one. Far terrain, again, VR does not resolve images far away. So far terrain, leave it off. Two past trees, leave it off. I mean, how good does a tree need to look to you, So the races in front of you, that's where you need to be looking. As long as I don't have trees flickering and jumping in and out of the scene to distract me, I'm fine. If you do have that, you could put the two past trees on to help you not get any flickering, but I haven't noticed it as an issue. Every once in a while, I will notice it, some pop-ins, but I mean, this day and age, I think most of us are used to seeing pop-ins at some degree in any video game that we play, right? So it's something that's easily ignored. So I leave it off because I don't want it to hit my frames per second when I'm on. Let's see, trilinear filtering doesn't make a difference. I leave it on just so things look a little bit smoother. It improves texture quality. It's just like this filtering here on 16 times. It's like a freebie. Turn it on. It doesn't take a hit on your graphics card one way or another, so you might as well have it on. Video memory swap high res. Basically, this is when the cars get closer to you, it swaps them to high res, so you see them cleaner. And then as they get further away from you, they drop the resolution. I leave it on. I've been experimenting with this on and off, and just here this past day, and it seems to work actually. And so I leave it on because I don't care what they look like far away, but as they get closer, I want them to definitely render a little bit higher. And I haven't noticed a frame rate. I mean, I was going around, me and this one person was swapping and passing people, and I wish I would have saved the video. I just clicked through there quickly and forgot to hit save, but it seemed to work. And so yeah, you can experiment with it, but I leave it on. 2048, squared for car textures, I'll leave that on. Obviously, you want your cars to look good, and yeah, it looks good that way. So hide car number, and that's up to you for your testing. So that's about it for the actual settings, the meat and potatoes of VR, what to set. I hope this helps explain it. I'll go out on the track and point out some areas that I had problems with when I was running live, live practice laps with other people. Obviously, I'm not running live ones right now, so you won't see those issues. So, but let's go on out into the track, and hopefully I can be talking over my engine sounds. I turned everything down, but hopefully you'll still hear me. So I see there's 65 FPS, 88. Of course, I'm recording now too, so it's gonna drop a few. 62 to 88 is what 89 now. So that's good enough. But yeah, when you have the shadows on, everything looks beautiful in the car. It's resolved nicely. Carbon fiber looks like carbon fiber. The top of the dash over there looks like it's a suede. But when you have them on low detail, it's really pixelated and looks bad. So you can see the resolution. Of course, on your screen, what you're seeing on YouTube, it's going to look better than what I see, obviously, but because I'm looking through a VR lens, but it's very clear out of the mirrors, so it looks great. You see smoke in the mirrors and stuff. Of course, I'm doing 1.5 super sampling right now. I'll just point out some stuff on the track. All through here, you pretty much, even with people around you, you'll run 90 FPS, no problem. Even with the marbles off to the side of the track there. Even through here, you always run 90 FPS. Now, when I get further down the track, I'll point out where when you have the crowds on, it really drops. Oh shit! Caught that grass. Through here again, you're still running high FPS rate. This whole section there is not a problem, even at 1.5 super sampling. It's right here that becomes a problem. When you go through here, it'll drop down to 45 FPS if you're at like 1.5 super sampling. If you're at 1.2 with everything set the way I have it, you're fine, you're golden. And then if you have the crowds on through there, it's a problem. It'll drop the FPS. Granted, it only drops it for a couple seconds. So if you're not too, if you don't have a big problem with asynchronous kicking on, you know, leave it maxed out. So all through here, it's easy peasy. You don't notice any FPS drop, and looks great. You know, whether cars are around you or not. But testing off track like this is a whole different ball game than testing with cars. So if you're trying to set your game up and you're doing what I started doing, which is testing off track without people because you didn't want to disturb everybody, go in and out of sessions over and over, you're not going to get the results. When you go into a regular race, it's going to look like crap. Oh, now on this front straight, it would always drop to 45 FPS. With the crowds off and stuff, it cleaned up. If you're at 1.2 super sampling, it never drops below 57, I believe is what it was on that front straight. But that front straight would always drop. There's really only two spots on this track that things drop, and that's the front straight and that back section where I just mentioned. Now, but when you go to Watkins Glen, I'm running live test sessions on Watkins Glen at 1.5 or 150% rather, super sampling with everything as you saw me have it set up now, and never drop out of FPS anywhere on the track. So, and right here you would drop. You'll drop down in the 60s, so you have to leave it on 1.2. Your shadow detail on high is fine, but if you're getting some frame drops, you turn your shadow quality down to medium or low, and that'll help you through that one little section. Same on the front straight as well. Of course, it's hard to talk and drive. I really drive much better than this, guys, and the one girl that's watching. Anyway, hopefully this is helpful, and let me know what your setup is. Share it with the community so we can all learn, and I'm sure to list what your graphics card is as well. But right here it always drops. And right now it actually dropped down to 65 FPS even at 1.5 super sampling, but 65 is not enough for the asynchronous to kick in, so it's not a big deal. Everywhere else I'm running 90 FPS. So yeah, just how it is. It's just a busy track, you know, rendering that. So, you know, what I was gonna say actually, and I got off, I missed my, lost my train of thought, but what I was gonna say is if you have a very busy track like this, all this grandstands and stuff around, and you find that your frames per second is dropping a lot or staying in 45 and it's bugging you, drop down your super sampling to 1.2. I would not go lower than 1.2, and I wouldn't go higher than 1.7, honestly. I've tried 2.0 super sampling, and it doesn't really look any better than 1.5. I mean, it's a smidgen. It's just marginally better. But what I tend to find is things look a little bit speckled, and it's just it's like it's oversaturated, you know, so it just doesn't look quite as good. 1.5 seems to be a pretty good sweet spot, or 150% rather, as they do in iRacing here. slow down. I mean, it's my practice session. Do what the hell I want. Okay. That's a little irritating. Anyway. Let's see, what else can I say? Now, when you get your super sampling right, and you're chasing people down, or they're chasing you down and you're running, everything feels really fast in this game. And but if you have it dropping into 45, 50 FPS range, see, there's some pop-in over there of those towers. I did have that pop-in. But I see I'm 90 FPS, 88 right there. Anyway, I lost my train of thought again. Anyway, yeah, so everything seems really fast, like it should if you get your super sampling correct, which is really nice. But so it is actually important to keep it out of the 45 FPS, not just for the bar factor for some people that are sensitive to asynchronous kicking in, but for just the engagement or the just the flow of things, how everything feels. Higher FPS, the better. So anyway.